Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of At the Table. Today we have a very special guest and friend of mine, Jai Howitt. Jai is a legend of a human, one of the better storytellers I've come across on the internet, and the founder of Art of Mondays. Jai's story is an impressive one. He's in his mid to late 20s, I think 27 now, and already founded 3 businesses, skipped university, and in this episode, we talk about his journey of starting several multi-million-dollar businesses, leaving that life behind to find his thing, something that he wanted to pour into for the rest of his life, which is Art of Mondays. Art of Mondays is a community of what they call misfits, entrepreneurs that want more out of life, and they have residencies around the world and are creating a university that to me is one of the more inspiring concepts I've come across. In the episode, we talk about his story of building these projects and mindset shifts that he's made over his career to allow him to live a better lifestyle and also to chase these wild goals that from the outside looking in seem almost impossible. He's done it with grace and already started several million-dollar businesses and is somebody that I look at as a rising star amongst our generation. He's also very honest and transparent about some of his learnings, and I think that should be applauded. So thank you, Jai. I hope you enjoy as much as I did. The whole setup itself right now is pretty scrappy, so the chairs, it's like, could be a little bit more comfortable.
How wide are these?
So that's 24, and then this one's
That's cool.
Yeah, so this one's a little wide, but we're shooting in 4K there.
Look at myself.
We've got our famous producer behind the camera who's keeping an eye on us.
Distracted reading books.
Yeah. So to kick things off, I wanted to take us back to actually the van tour that you were giving me the debrief on before we started this. You're one of 7. Family takes you on a road trip around the States. In childhood, who were you as a person? I feel like we know you as the Jai today, that's the successful entrepreneur and living like this crazy, beautiful lifestyle. But take us back to the early days and how you became who you are today.
Kind words, thank you. Yeah, so this isn't my first time in New York. The first time was, as you said, I must have been 14 or 15. And there were a lot of things in my developmental years that I think shaped who I am today. But a big part of that was my parents, who were both school teachers. And despite them going down a more traditional path, I think they always wanted more for us as kids. And like you said, big family. So it was pretty clear early on that we'd be, forging our own way by way of finances. If we ever wanted to go to university, we'd pay our own way. And so I think I just had seeds planted along the way that led me to explore other ideas, which I'm really grateful for. And a lot of our childhood, it was just my dad working and mum having kids. So
Pumping them out.
Yeah. She was
7 is no joke, man.
we get a lot of people say, "Do you not have a TV growing up?" and all those jokes. But so, yeah, but one thing we did have was life experience, I think, and the US trip was an example of that, where they went and took their life savings and were like, how can we give this experience to our kids? And so we spent 6 months in the US in an RV or a motorhome, a relatively small one with 9 of us, which was a crazy thought, but we're all very close, and maybe that helped. Mum and Dad actually have a blog which still exists with photos and stories of the whole trip, which is wild. And so I think there was probably a seed there that now I'm chasing, which is that where inspiration comes from, and it's new places, new people, and really the sentiment that your environment shapes who you are. And I think that's the thing that holds a lot of people back, is they're in their hometowns that they grew up in, around the same cues and habits that they've always had, and they expect to have change. And so for me, change is a really important thing in my life, and growth and progression. And so I think that starts with where you live and who you surround yourself with. So
Absolutely. You've talked a little bit about the competitive spirit that being raised in a family as big as yours kind of led you to feel pretty continuously. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if that was the family element or just being competitive by nature, but especially having brothers similar age and fighting for food on the dinner table was where it all started. But we played a lot of sport growing up, and I would say back then it was more of an obsessive kind of competitive thing, and then I mellowed out a bit over time, but took that into the world of business and creative and art, and but what I love about that is team sport in particular is it teaches you to fail in public because inevitably in team sport things don't go right and there are failures along the way, but it's in front of other people. And then I think that was a really core learning for me into new projects as in adulthood, where I was more comfortable failing. And I think people's willingness to fail is such an important aspect of life, because eventually something will work. Jeff Bezos has this great line where he says, you might try 10 things and 9 out of 10 fail. The one works, but that one could have outsized returns, 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1, and you should take those odds every time. And that really stuck with me when it was from one of his shareholder letters. And so it's not just try lots of things. It's like try lots of things, and the thing that works will work. Like it'll progress you so much further in whatever medium you're trying to make it in. So yeah, I think that's probably what some of the competitiveness led to. Also, just I grew up, I loved video games. I was a bit of an introverted kid. I didn't want to speak to anyone. I didn't even want to go next door to our neighbors to ask for milk when we ran out of milk. We lived next to them for like 10 years. It was like, I didn't want to call anyone, which was a learned skill that took years to learn. But yeah, I guess that was maybe helpful to know about me.
Yeah.
To shape
For
who I am
sure.
today.
Yeah, I feel like failure is a muscle that over time you can develop, but is really hard to lean into, especially when you're building out loud or you have this image that the world sees and maybe isn't representative of the whole picture. And we like to place perfection online, but to have that skill of like climbing from up the mountain and walking back down the mountain to start over at zero is just this muscle that you build over time. And we'll definitely get into that. But you mentioned something about paving your own way if you were going to go to school and paying for it yourself. Talk to me about the decision as to why you chose to skip uni and pursue entrepreneurship instead.
Yeah. So far, none of myself or my siblings have been to university. So we're two of them are still in school, but we're 5 for 5 so far, and I don't think the others will. And I think there was when I was about 15, our parents spent a lot of really the money that they did have on self-development and seminars and Tony Robbins and like these sorts of our parents' era. The whole shtick was 7 passive income streams and you'll be financially free and rich dad poor dad and that sort of thing. But part of that was a program that we did. It was called Kids Biz Program or something like that, and it was a hefty investment that I'm really grateful for. And we all did it together. It was like the whole family was in on it. It was a year program, and every month there was like some sort of challenge. So one month it was build a website. The next month was speed build and pre-launch a business. Just get pre-sales. And we went in. We're in a little country town, and one of the things we did was we wanted to spray paint house numbers on people's curbs out the front. I don't know if you have them.
Yeah. We had that in Kansas.
Right, yeah, country.
Ironically.
Yeah. So you can identify the house. It's easy to find. Yeah. And I think it was selling them for $20 a pop and $25 if you want glow-in-the-dark paint and on the number. And we just put little letters in all the letterboxes in our little town. And I think we pre-sold 50 of them or something like that. And of course, us being the older kids had to actually do the thing, and the little kids were having a great time. And that's just one example. But I think there was enough of those that led to being like, okay, there's more options in this world than to go a traditional pathway. I wanted to be a software engineer or something. I remember when I was 13, I sat down with my dad and I said, he asked me what I wanted to do. I said, I want to be a software engineer because it sounded smart and like I could earn good money doing that. and he turned to me and he said, you don't have to go to university. And I remember being like, that was the first time I was like, huh, really? Yeah, like that's normal. So, yeah, grateful for that. And that's, I think, why I say environment's so important, because in my case, I got it from my parents, but in many other people's case, it's that one friend that it takes a contrarian kind of pathway, or it's that, when you go off to boarding school and you're in this new space and then suddenly you start to think differently, or you move to a new country, or so I think that can be created in many different ways. But yeah, self-education just became really important, and especially with the speed of the internet. And I was into gaming and technology, I suppose. So maybe I saw a bit of that way. Loved YouTube, and so I realized that I could learn a skill set and not have to spend the reality is, like, you can either go to university and spend $50,000, whatever it is. I don't know what it is yet. And 4 years of your life. Imagine if you spend that same 4 years and 50 grand investing in yourself. Imagine how further ahead and capable you are as a person. And I wasn't thinking exactly that clearly back then, but that's hindsight. But that's kind of my perspective today, I think. And I'm really, really invested in helping other people find that path for themselves, like make a living doing what they love, or building something really big, or whatever pathway it is. I just think there are so many ways to create that freedom in your life today that weren't even available 5-10 years ago. That Naval has this great saying, there are 7 billion people in this world. I hope one day there's 7 billion businesses. There's 8 billion people now, I think. So I love that line of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, Naval's like one of my favorite thinkers.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the latest pod on Chris Williamson's Modern Wisdom.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, crazy.
It's so good.
It's the first time he's popped up on something like that in ages, right?
Yeah, in a while.
Yeah.
But so many nuggets of wisdom on that. Tell us about some of the early day projects. You mentioned spray painting on the sidewalk, but before you launched Brand Booster, were there other projects that you were kind of toying around with, and what did that process look like for you? Because I think a lot of people might want to start something but not be in that place of like, okay, failing. And talk to us about how you developed that muscle and ultimately launched Brand Booster.
Yeah. Okay. I when I was year 12, I was kind of in media, one of my subjects, and I kind of just wanted. It was the era of, like, on Facebook there were those Facebook influencers, they called them, but they were just people doing funny skits and stuff. And I remember thinking, they can get, if you can get famous this way, you could probably make money doing that. So should I try that? And I wasn't the kind of person that would sit on camera and be really comfortable at that time. But I made a Facebook page called Just Jai, and I started making stupid videos, like really cringy stuff looking back. And I think I used to spend $20 to run Facebook ads into, like, India and Pakistan, all of these, like, places that you can get really cheap views. And then I got into this trap of, like, these videos are getting hundreds of thousands of views, not quality views. And I had to keep spending on every new video to keep up. And I remember, like, dude, I'm running out of money. I was like 16, 17. That was one thing I think maybe led me into just picking up a camera for the first time, started making YouTube videos. And then we moved to the Cocos Islands, which is a whole other story we can get into. But that was the creative field. But also about the same time, just out of high school, I finished high school and had a gap year. And typically in Australia, you'd have a gap year or go straight into study. And then after the gap year, you'd probably end up studying anyway. And so it was like a pivotal time because a lot of people either travel or they go to study. And I was working at a timber mill, one of those big warehouse machinery, you wear the hard hat, and I was working 12-hour night shifts, and the next week it'd be day shifts, and it was a nightmare. But I did it for 5 months because I wanted to save to travel. And I look back on it really fondly, funnily enough, because it was the time I think I had a lot of great ideas, because I'd be standing there for 12 hours with nothing else to do. You couldn't listen to music. You weren't allowed anything like that. You'd be standing watching wood. I used to rip the labels off the wood and write stuff on the back of it in the dead spots where the cameras couldn't see where I was. And one of the ideas was to create or buy an Instagram account, like a travel theme page, and then grow that and eventually be able to, get free stays and hopefully make money from it. And I did. I went to, just search how to buy an Instagram account, and this is 2016 or something, and bought one for like $150. It had 7,000 followers or something, some travel page. And then actually through that process, I met my previous co-founder as well. He was a young guy who was selling an account. We used to jam on Skype for like 5 years. So just a crazy how, like, the dots start connecting, But yeah, so that was, growing Instagram accounts was a thing. I hooked it up to a software called Follow Liker, where you could just automate engagement and you could like and comment and follow other people and unfollow them. And back then it worked well. And then I started doing it for other people, small businesses in the area. I think I charged $59 a month to grow your Instagram account, and up to 129 was my premium package. And I made a bit of money doing that. I was probably making, by the time I was 19, 12, $1,300 a month,
Wow.
which covered my costs,
Yeah.
pre-tax. I didn't know anything about tax at the time. And anyway, so I think that was just like getting me into this world of trying things. And I should mention that it took a long time to work. It wasn't overnight. I built a website on ClickFunnels, like a 19-page. ClickFunnels is made for like one pages. I made an actual website on it. It was the stupidest thing ever. It's called Easy Social Influence, and that's where I was selling this Instagram growth service. And that got me into the content world, and then I was like, oh, I want to be a freelancer, a videographer, and make videos and get free stays. And so I just I think one thing led to the next. And I think that was the important thing for me, because I wasn't trying to do one thing that was the end goal. I was just like following my curiosity, and it would lead me to something else. And then I would just be okay moving and changing it. And a lot of people get sunk cost fallacy, which is, you've invested 6 months of time and money into this one direction. It makes it really hard to shift direction because you feel like you lost all that. So I got some stories around that too with Brand Booster later on. But I think that kind of led me to the story of Brand Booster, which is when I was 20, 21. And I was like, I want to build an agency. I want to build something maybe bigger than myself, freelancing. Because I did that for a while. I lived in Bali for 6 months, and just scraped by, just made enough to keep going. My goal was $500 a week. And anyway, then I was like, I want to build something more substantial, bring in more creative people into this ecosystem. And Brand Booster was born. Pivoted heaps of times. Initially, when that started, I was just trying to create leads, as anyone does in the early days of a business. And I was cold DMing like no tomorrow, 20, 30, 50 people a day. Everything from gyms to chiropractors to eventually e-commerce brands was kind of the space I enjoyed the most. And lined up probably 40 or 50 sales calls. This little kid in his bedroom. And got rejected on every single one of them. So I don't know what drove me. I think it was something I find really tactical is having a reference point, someone who's done the thing you're trying to do. And I had that. I'd seen I was close enough to people. I guess I was really curious, so I'd just like dig in and research people, and I could see it was working for them. So I was like, why can't it work for me? And because of that, I guess I had enough conviction and naivety to just keep going and not realize how hard it was going to be. Anyway, so pivoted a bunch of times, realized that I was holding myself back. And my self-worth was like, why are these people going to pay me for anything? So I had to go far beyond what I was comfortable. Started pitching bigger retainers. And actually the first kind of serious client, I suppose you could call them, was a brand who paid me $8,000 a month to make content for them. I was doing 20 videos a month and 150 photos. Like it was, that money also went to hiring models and stuff. But that was the backbone for what became Brand Booster. Hired someone to come and work on my little studio apartment table with me, and that grew quite quickly. I think it was the timing also really helped, but I was really just obsessed with the process. I was a creative at heart, and so I guess our work was good enough that it got some attention, and social media, and we can go into ways that we grew that, but that sort of grew to 13 people, and we had a warehouse studio, and I had a lot of pride around that. I was really 21, 22, and thought I was on top of the world for about a year, and then some things changed and it sort of came crashing down. I'm happy to go into that story if you want to hear it.
Yeah. I would love to hear it. One quick note on the reference point. I think that's such an underrated thing in today's age, but the inverse of that as well is like when I was at my previous company, I would look up the ladder at people that, if I did everything right, I would become. And understanding if you want that or not, for me, was a good guiding light of like, if I get that life, like, am I really fulfilled? And do I feel like this is my life's purpose? And the answer was no. And having that for me was a great, just like vision for myself to look for the people that I was inspired by and the mentors. But would love to hear more about the building the team to 13 people, having that sexy warehouse. People were playing ping pong, and you had a mini Google warehouse in the middle of Australia. But dive into what happened and the lessons learned out of that.
Yeah. That starting with the end in mind is such a great thought as well. It goes both ways. Yeah, so it was pretty scrappy. It was just like make as many videos as we possibly could. We were shooting for e-commerce brands. That was the main thing for their ads. The warehouse came about really fast. Like I went from my studio apartment to hired the apartment downstairs and 2 more people just to come in and help. They were just contracting at the time, but I was basically like made a bit of money from this brand paying me, and it was a retainer, so it was every month. Okay, I had some security. I only sold 3-month contracts. That was, I guess, a fairly conscious decision. Only did one thing as well as I could, and then within a month, took everything that I'd made to that point, put it into a warehouse, back very much against the wall. I actually reached out to a bit of a mentor of mine, the reference point I had in that space, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, what would you do in my position?" And he said, when your back's against the wall, you push harder than ever. And I was like, that's all I needed to hear, let's spend all the money we have.
That's fucking good,
it was
baby.
$30,000 or something, on this down payment for the warehouse, and no way of figuring out how we'd actually maintain it. But funny, for me, the table tennis and the basketball hoop, and that was all just because I love to play, and I wanted that for myself more than anything. But it actually ended up being a real growth lever for the company, because Stephen Bartlett talks about this in his book, the useless absurdity of it. It wasn't necessary. It was money spent that didn't need to be spent, but it became. There was actually one thing in particular. We had like this office pod booth looking thing that was really quite cool and innovative, and we actually did a content exchange for it. So the brand gave it to us for free, but we did heaps of work for it, like way more than we needed to. But it was the best thing I ever did, because that was the thing that people remembered when they thought of Brand Booster, when they thought of us. They thought of the space and that pod. And in Stephen Bartlett's example, he had this gigantic blue slide and a ball pit in their office. And every PR article talked about that, took photos of that. And it became this symbol of who we were, this young, innovative company. And people wanted to work with that. It became the association. So that was a learning that I only came to realize years later, but I think contributed to a lot of the growth. And we used to make stupid TikToks and stuff like that. But the team, I was just anyone I could think of. I'd say come and work with us. This big vision for this thing, and then we were doing about $1 million a year and had 13 people, which is probably already overstaffed. 50-60% of our revenue was just in team, which was my own naivety. And then we got to a point where revenue kind of just petered out or plateaued, and expenses kept going up and up and up. And that mid-year in particular, we made $1 million, but we spent 1.2, mostly in people, mostly in like things offsetting into tax, debt, and it was probably 8 or 10 months too late. That I was trying to be the nice guy. I was trying to make sure everyone was okay. I was trying to hold on to the warehouse. I was trying to hold on to this identity that everything's good. Like everything is going well. And I got to a point where I just had to be really honest with myself, with people in my life. And that's when, we let go of the warehouse, broke lease on that, let go of a couple of people in the team, broke up with my girlfriend at the time, all in the space of like 2 days. But it was one of my favorite weeks, weirdly enough, because it felt like, finally I'm okay doing the uncomfortable thing that's going to move this forward. So, that was a big identity shift for me, big ego death as well, because I had a lot of identity associated with these things, and it ultimately was meant to happen exactly when it should. The actual catalyst was reading The Way of the Superior Man. And there was a chapter in there that was like, I forget what, chapter 12 or something, that talked about how a man is like an onion, and every layer of the onion is their purpose at that point in time. And as you peel back the layers, you get closer to your true purpose. And I was like, Brand Booster's a layer. I need to rip it off, let's go. So that was the story of Brand Booster. And the goal was always actually just to build brands for myself. So I leaned heavily into that after that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. What a cool story, man. I've heard you mention now a couple times like the identity bit, and I feel like as a young entrepreneur, I'm sure that's core to most people. Like you're 21, 22 at the time, you have a $1 million top line, you're hiring people that are probably older than you in some cases, and it's very easy for that ego to inflate. Talk a little bit about that ego death and coming out of that. What were some things that you did in order to not allow that to happen again?
Yeah. The shift itself was letting go of all that stuff. There was definitely psychedelic journeys involved in that, mushroom journeys, which helped me realize and understand it in depth, and kind of just get out of your conscious mind and see things in other directions and ways, and be more okay with it. So that was a big part of the journey, I think, as well. And realizing that it's not just about me, I think a lot of the wanting to make people feel proud was like wanting to make my parents proud, wanting to make and they openly, showed me and told me that they were. But when you kind of lose everything, you're like, well, what do I have now? Who am I? How do I give worth or bring meaning to this life without the things that I'm associated with? And so it was actually stripping back and being okay with being worth something and valuable, just me. It was just me and nothing else. Which is still, still something on my mind, and I think everyone, it's natural to think about it. So, yeah, that's the honest answer. I'm trying to think of more practical ways that I did it, but that was the journey I took. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I love the analogy of peeling back the onion and having purpose at a given time, but allowing yourself to find that next adventure that might lead to more fulfillment for yourself, obviously, but then for the rest of the world. How about like, I know there was a second business that you were simultaneously building, naming this later,
Naming this later. Yeah.
So you walk away from two successful businesses, you go travel for a few months. Talk to us about the purpose driven journey that you went down and how you came about finding that for yourself.
Yeah. When Brand Booster was kind of blowing up, for lack of a better term, and I had to lean down and fix that, it became profitable again and kind of just closed the doors eventually. The brand was kind of running on the side, bit of a side project with a really good friend of mine, actually the one I'd met years prior on that Instagram selling website, which is kind of funny. And with that particular brand, again, it was all about, I think most of the things I've done have been about learning. It's like, how can I just become a more capable human being in this venture? And then that one I knew was like not the end goal. So I was like, we want to sell this at some point. And it grew well. It was similar size, if not bigger, with just the two of us running it. Like it was a much leaner. Learnt the lessons that way, but it still wasn't the thing. I think I was waking up without a lot of passion. I was kind of just doing the same thing every day just to keep the thing afloat. And we took on some debt to invest in inventory and that sort of thing. So it had its own journey as well. But when I first started traveling, I was still involved in that, and I just wasn't working on it, and it was causing a bit of conflict with my best mate and co-founder, because he was like all in on it. And he's like, how can you be all in on it? And we had, we ran all the ideas. We're like, could we sell out the stock and shut it down? Could we sell this right now? Could you operate it? And we had Mushroom Journey probably helped me through that as well. And in the end, I stepped away and gave him my shares in that business. And maybe there's an ego death in that as well. Very few people actually know that story, but for me, it was an exercise in opportunity cost. I realized that for that business to really succeed, it was a year, 2 years of our core undivided attention and focus to an exit. And I was like, what else could I create in this world in that same amount of time? Even though there's some value here, I think the opportunity cost is too great. I have to go do this other thing. So that was the 6 months on the road with no income, burned through everything, all my savings at the time. And just, searching for inspiration. It was when I picked up the camera again, just from a personal perspective, and started making videos and posting them on the internet. And And that gained momentum, and it was fun. And I met Alina in that process, and many friends I have today. And
It's the best ROI you've ever
yeah,
had,
yeah, totally. And so, yeah, going down that journey, I think you sort of realize the things that are important. And to me, that was new experiences. That was the people I spend my time with. And had I had those people around me maybe earlier on and being willing to open up to them, maybe the other stuff would have gone differently. But that's how the cookie crumbles, as they say. And yeah, that sort of almost by accident is what led to Art of Mondays, which is the mission today. And for a long time, I wasn't ready to build again. I was still in that phase of no, maybe I was a bit scarred or whatever it was. But the more I lent into it, the more I got excited and fueled and realized that this could be something really, really powerful beyond just me. It could be a great business too, but it could help a lot of people. And it was the first time that I felt that way. Previous things were selfish. They were, they could, maybe I could earn extra money and freedom and maybe support family. But yeah, first time actually seeing real world change, which is like, it's a different level of like drive. And I think you feel that too with your work. So yeah.
How did you stumble upon the idea of Art of Mondays?
Yeah. I'll tell you the story of how we came up with the name, because that's quite a funny one. I was actually with Cami, previous co-founder of Naming This Later, and at the time we were still. This is months before the actual idea came about, but we were working on the brand together. We needed cash because it's such a cash start growing a brand, and we're like, cool, Jai, your social stuff is kind of picking up. Could we do presets or LUTs or some sort of digital assets to sell alongside, and then use that to cash flow the brand? Well, okay, let's come up with a name for that. And a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Tess, she has a list of like playlists on her Spotify, and one of them was Apricots on Mondays. I thought it was just a cool, quirky brand name or something. And then also the word Monday really called to me because, I believe that how you feel when you wake up on a Monday tells you a lot about how you feel in life. And I've been telling myself that since I was 18. And I also liked the art of life or the art of living, that concept of, I'd use that in a few Instagram captions, and those videos did well. So I was like, maybe other people resonate with this. And anyway, we're at this cafe and we're like, we've got to come up with a name, so we can just speed launch this thing. And I went and, no word of a lie, sat on the toilet, sat down. I was like, I got it. Came back and I was like, Art of Mondays. And he was like, cool. Bought the domain, but
Wow.
But back then it was a different idea. So the sentiment was there, the value was there, but it was a different concept. We ended up building that, but then saying no. It's why are we doing this? Do we actually want to be doing this? No, probably not. Let's just do the actual thing. I stepped away from the brand somewhere in that process, but I loved the name. I was like, I got to use this for something. And then it was months later when the idea came about. It was kind of through conversation with Cami, and then I was like, well, let's ask if people want this, and so I wrote a list of 100 people, that creatives and entrepreneurs and people in that field that might want, a space or a community to meet others like them. And of those 100 people, I called 50 of them in 2 weeks, just WhatsApp call. Just for feedback. I wasn't trying to sell anything. I was just like, hey, if this thing existed, what would you want it to look like? What would you hypothetically pay for it? Just wanted the data. And I got through 50, pivoted a couple of times and felt like I had what I needed, and launched with that, with a Stripe link and a deck, Canva deck. Yep. We got our first 10 members that way. And I think that was due to a lot of the goodwill and trust I'd built doing the other things and being open about those. So that was a huge, huge lever for sure. Really hard thing to start otherwise. And then I brought in, so Cami wasn't involved in this. I did this solo, and I brought in a co-founder, Evan, who changed the business, changed my life as well. And yeah, it's been a year and a half now, a little over a year and a half. And it's grown probably outside our wildest expectations, but also been really fun. Like, it's so close to me. I'm building for me, so it's probably supported the life I want to be living and being able to create that for other people. So that's the short version.
No, I love it. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier before we started recording, but this idea of like perfection and showing the world a perfect product or a perfect image. What was it about getting that first iteration out there, getting feedback that, you know, allowed you to build the final product or a more revised version of the product? I feel like, speaking for myself, I sometimes get caught in this place of like, it needs to be perfect before I show anyone. I need to build like an email list. Talk to us about the importance of just getting it out there and having like an MVP and then iterating on that MVP.
Yeah, that really comes down to the 80-20 principle. Funnily enough, I am a perfectionist in a lot of things, particularly when I was younger. So I believe it's a learned skill, and I believe it comes through reps and understanding that it needs to happen. So, yeah, for me, I also think I'm inherently lazy as a person. I think I try to find shortcuts in things, and now I try to use it to my advantage. You know, I was the kid in school that didn't like studying, you know, and do everything I possibly could except study. Yeah, kind of turned out all right, you know. So kind of taking that into this, but you might think you know what people want, but the market will tell you what they want. And I think that's really the core principle here, which is you just have to build it to 80%, get it out there, and see what people think. And then you can make it better. You can iterate and you can pivot and you can, you know, do all these things. But most people think they have to get it all the way there. And then they're really attached to that thing staying that way. But that might not be what the market wants. And I think that's ultimately what creates great ideas, because you just listen to people. And so that was really the strategy, I think, more than anything, along with laziness and yeah, validating the product. So big on MVPs, big on speed building stuff in a few days, and just going hitting live, see what people think. And this is the first time I was like, as you said, building in public, building out loud, was like willing to document it and just show people. Because for me, I think it's, for some business models, it's not beneficial. If you're in e-commerce, for example, sharing the whole journey can just invite more competitors and make your marketing costs more inefficient, and then suddenly it's a lot harder to build a business. In our case, there's a bit of a moat around it. It's a really hard thing to start and build, and we always just want to do it very differently to other people. There's communities and members clubs and networks exist already. They serve a certain type of person. Some of them more on the, you know, watches and nice cars. Some of them more on the spirituality side. And we're somewhere in the middle. You know, people that want to build really impactful big businesses, but also have that freedom and lifestyle and balance at the same time. So, yeah, when you're building for yourself, it makes it easier to just keep going. You know, put it out there. Yeah.
What was that first founder residency like?
So different to what I did now. Yeah.
What were some of like the early learnings?
Yeah. For me, I found myself really swayed by not what they wanted, but the group itself. I was like, I wanted to be chill. I wanted to, you know, not be too much, not shape the group too much. And so it was just like, you know, you're with a few mates and you're just hanging out at a house. Now we do a lot of work to close the gap between strangers and friends as quickly as we humanly can. And so we do a lot of vulnerable shares and framing, you know, questions and conversations early on, physical exercises, and you know, there's a lot of science behind how this really works. But basically, it's getting people's walls down as soon as we can, and getting them interacting and realizing that we're all the same. It's okay to be a bit silly and goofy and play games, a lot of games as well. So that's like a really, really core part of it, speed to vulnerability. And then, of course, the space matters too, the house, the communal areas, you know, so people aren't segregated in their bedrooms and they can escape. They have to come down into the central area. So that's a lot of stuff that we think heavily about. And so the curated trips. We're really careful with who comes to it. It's member only, but even within the members who have already been vetted, we curate the group even more. And I imagine you do a similar thing, right? That's what creates the magic of the conversation, because you know people are gonna get it. You know they're gonna gel. So yeah, I think the best thing we ever did was have really high standards for who can get into this community, and stick to them even in the times when you need the money. You know, we were paying ourselves $2,500 a month, which is well below living cost, and there were some months where there was no one joining. I'm like, what the fuck? How are we going to make money this month? My co-founder and I, and but it's those times it feels really easy to just cave and, maybe it's okay here and relax on your values here. But that's the most important time to stay true to who you are because, yeah, in the end, it works out.
Absolutely. Speed to vulnerability. I haven't heard that one before, but that is incredible, dude. I think that's the most important thing when you're creating a container or a space, especially in today's age where people are drawn, to hopping on their phone or, might feel uncomfortable walking into an environment, understandably. But what are some ways that you create a safe space for people that are high achievers that might have this image that they're trying to protect, to open up and provide the real version of them that, oftentimes maybe they don't really show the world?
Yeah. The first thing is games for sure, like bringing out the child again, because especially people that have responsibilities, staff, have had to grow up really fast. It's all within us. We all want it to come out, but there's usually not a creative space. So some of the games are the stupidest things ever, like, out loud noises and interactions with each other that make you look like a fool, but then you just have to lead by example. As, the curators of the group, you have to be willing to, be vulnerable as well. That's a big one. That lets down the walls. And then certain curated sessions where we can sit down and frame questions and get to the vulnerable points of those. But also physical interaction with people. Like in some of the games, I'm trying to think of examples that don't sound weird on camera, but you're jumping on each other's back and there's physical touch in a non-invasive way, but that brings people close.
Totally.
So there are a few of the things early on, and then having a nice mix. Allowing the flow of some downtime. We all eat most dinners together. That's a big thing because that you come back at the end of the day and you can share the stories. You have this thing called peak, pit, and papaya, which is what's your peak from today? What's the pit? And what's your papaya, which is something funny or hilarious that happened. And then you got everyone just like losing their shit over dinner. You're laughing at these stories that happened that day. So
yes,
bringing people back together. At the end of the day was a big one too.
Yeah, we call it rosebud thorn.
Okay, same thing.
But that's a beautiful conversation topic to just open people up. What's the perfect day look like in one of these founder residencies? Lots of games. I know you guys have like think tanks too, but walk somebody through, if you were to design the perfect day, what would that look like?
Hard to answer because I think it's the combination of days that makes it what it is. But start the day with some sort of movement and ideally as a group and maybe a little medi after that to set the tone. And breakfast can be, make your own, like make it what you want it. And if people go to work a little bit, that's often a good time to kind of mingle and work as well. And then session wise, we do a thing called Help Me Help You. And this one's specific to business, but the challenges, for listeners that aren't in business, it could be a challenge in your life. And we share around the circle and then we go, well, who's experienced this? Who's solved this problem in their own life? And then we pair people into small groups and we're able to just be really tactical solving these challenges, which is meaningful because, you could have a lot of entrepreneurial friends. We don't really talk about that stuff all the time. You don't talk about the shit that's going wrong and the fires you're going to put out and the staff that you have to fire and the $200,000 in debt that you are in Brand Booster back in the day. So we try to create space for those things to come out. But otherwise, a lot of games, a lot of the houses have things like table tennis, ironically, and these things and sports outside and a lot of sunshine, ideally, and sitting around the campfire towards the end of the night too. Communal dinners, big one. But I think just being fluid is the main thing. Like the day can be what you make it and go with the flow. Yeah.
For sure. I've heard you talk about the solo founder journey versus having a co-founder and being able to share ideas and have somebody to lean on. I imagine building this space for solo founders can be, similar to like you talk about, where you just feel this lightness in communicating things that are going wrong with the business or just things that you're going through personally. It probably allows people to share that same experience almost like if they're a solo founder and, they're going through it and they share these ideas with other founders, it might almost feel like they have that person. But what are some things that you've learned about the solo journey versus having a co-founder?
I'm glad I've done both. much prefer co-founder. That's been my reflection. Maybe I got really lucky with the people that I picked. I know a lot of horror stories too, but for me, the beauty of having someone to do something, to go through shit with, is it makes it so much more enjoyable, for one, more fun, but also you're not reliant on yourself. You know, your down days, the days when you feel like shit or you can't be bothered doing something. You got someone else saying, "Yo, let's go." Do you need that on?
Yeah, we'll switch it.
I might have finished the sentence just.
Little
Reframe
intermission in the day.
We're back.
We're back, baby. Let's hop back into solo versus co-founder journey, your lessons there, and how you decided to build Art of Mondays with a co-founder.
Yeah, well, I started at solo originally, and I got a month in, and I was like, I knew my weak spots, I knew my kind of zones of genius, and I wanted to lean into those. And I think, actually, this is a little tangent, but really relevant. I think school teaches you to be a generalist. It teaches you to do all the subjects, and you could get a 60% in English and a 90% in math, but you still got to do both. I say, like, go do the math thing, do more math classes. And, you know, because that's how life is. You do more of the things that you enjoy and light you up, and you're going to get really good at them. And there's an element of both. But I got to this point a month in, I was like, there's a lot of stuff I don't want to be doing. And I know that because maybe I've done it enough times before. And I need someone that can fill my blind spots. And so that's when I went down the rabbit hole of consulted with a guy I connected with years prior, and he recommended this book called Rocket Fuel. It's the traction, I'll just say a bunch of words, EOS system, entrepreneurial operating system, model of, it basically talks about, Rocket Fuel talks about the relationship between a visionary and an integrator. Think about Apple, Steve and Steve, one being the visionary, Steve Jobs, and the other one being the integrator, the person that kind of was the glue that held things together, that usually more product or technical or operational minded, and how that relationship is so critical for a lot of great companies. And so I saw myself more in this visionary seat, and I was like, I need someone that can help me operationalize this. And so Evan and I connected actually back in Brand Booster days. He worked within another agency in Australia, one of the biggest. He led to a lot of their growth, and he had this podcast within, and he asked me to be on it, and that's how we connected years prior, you know. And It's all of these little seeds, right? And he was the first person I thought to call, because I knew he went above and beyond in his work with that company, and I knew he'd be the kind of person to do a similar thing. And complementary skill sets. We did personality tests. We took it really slow, like dated almost. He flew across the country and slept on my floor for 4 days. I think that said a lot about his character. He paid for it. You know, he just flew over, slept on my floor, was willing to go through shit. And we mapped out values and vision. And we basically had a co-founder relationship from then onwards, and we didn't even sign a contract until 11 months later. Like, that was the level of trust that we had, which I don't recommend to the people watching this, but just the context. So I really value the right co-founder, but they have to be complementary. You have to have different skill sets with some overlap, sure, but different skill sets. And I think the ability to match each other's values is really important, but match each other's output too. In the last example with the brand, you know, Cami and I were very aligned as people and skill sets, but I wasn't all in on that business, and I wasn't going to be at that season of my life, and I knew that, you know, enough to step away from it. So that's important to be on the same page. And we do a lot of things like I have one recurring weekly meeting in my life, and that's with Evan for an hour and a half every Monday. And we have a section in there where it's feedback. It's sharing vulnerable thoughts and giving each other feedback, constructive and positive. And we make sure we do it because it keeps the communication open. And oftentimes it's just things that might be bubbling up inside you that you haven't said about, you know, things that are annoying you about, you know, Luke, you know, you keep asking me the same fucking question, and I haven't told you, I haven't given you that feedback, right? So it's a space for that. And it diffuses situations. So
that's so healthy.
Yeah. So that's probably more of a strategic way to keep it working. But as I said before, you know, this is a person you're going to spend a lot of time with. So make them one of those 5 people you want to spend most of your time with, and make sure they have the values of someone you'd want to be like as well. Yeah.
An hour and a half meeting that's recurring per week, and that being like the only call that's recurring is like one of the coolest things I've heard. I think sometimes like the 24/7 hustle can be fantasized in the founder and the more competitive professions. How have you been able to find balance with travel, obviously mindfulness, but also building a company that is from the outside looking in, just crushing it?
I think it's a shift in culture, or at least if it's not happening now, it will. There's been a shift into that hustle culture, and I think there's going to be a shift out at some point because there's so much more to life than just work. And granted, I work a lot. Like I'm not going to deny that fact. I enjoy it. I want to be doing it, and I think I can create a lot of impact in the work that I do. But when you really zoom out, when you're sitting on your deathbed, what's the stories you're going to tell people? It's not, I worked so hard, I built such a great big business. It's that time that I went with my family and spent a month, living in some country somewhere new, or the sitting around the campfire sharing stories kind of conversations. And so for me, it's about incorporating that stuff into the life along the way, so you can enjoy the process and not the outcomes. So many people spend their life working towards those outcomes, but why can't you just be doing those things now, and then it's more sustainable? So that's probably more the mentality I try to have. Still figuring it out as well, like especially with the travel. Big lesson with travel is just to go slower. Don't try to do too much. Spend more time in each place if you have the means to, of course. We're full time on the road now since the start of this year, so no home base to go back to, which was a big shift because I used to crave that routine, and so my thinking was, well, if we don't have a home base, we have to make a home on the road. So trying to do that.
I love that. I want to touch on the outcome bit, because I think that's something that I've struggled with a lot, is like looking so much to the future and placing so much emphasis on reaching a certain outcome that it almost steals the enjoyment of the day to day. How have you been able to live that life of pursuing things that are, large goals, but also enjoy the day to day and tapping into your own mindfulness and enjoying life at the same time?
It's a really hard thing for ambitious types of people to do. For me also. So many tangents we could go on with this. A phrase that comes to mind, don't know where I got this from, but I really like it. It's to learn wonder and to achieve focus. And I think it's seasonal. A lot of people get stuck in the focus forever, achieve forever. But you need to go through both waves to also, like, time spent being bored usually leads to the greatest ideas, and those great ideas actually lead to more results anyway. So it's a backwards way of looking at it. It's like I could just work hard and grind towards this thing, or I could do less, get kind of bored, get better ideas that make this thing way better anyway, and suddenly you end up with a better result. So it's this contradiction that is constant. And maybe it depends on the type of person you are, and if you're an ideas person or more just a doer. I think understanding your personality type, your human design, like who you are inherently as a person, your blueprint, and being able to lean into what comes naturally to you. Like everyone's a little bit different. For me, I thrive in like communal kind of community spaces, but also need the solitude and the greenery and, the slower, calmer type environments too. So knowing that, I can, plan accordingly and stay in more of a state of flow and freedom. And so I think that's probably more what it comes back to. But you also have to, the first 7-8 years in my career, I didn't have that. I was going for the outcomes, and then I got burnt a couple of times, and then I realized that, so you got to learn the hard way, I think, sometimes as well. Yeah.
What are some ways that you slow down? I know you mentioned meditation on the founder residencies is something that you guys try to do as a group, but you personally, I know you mentioned you journal. What does your practice look like for slowing down?
Yeah. Alina's a pretty good help with this one, but
go, Alina.
We throw in some offline days. Today was meant to be an offline day, actually, but here we are. No, it's
fucking Luke. God damn it.
which I admittedly still struggle with initially, and then you ease into it, and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. So, I challenge anyone watching this, like, when was the last time you spent a full day, literally no technology, let alone a week? One of my misogis for this year is to spend a week. In my mind, it's backpacking through Patagonia. So, with nothing, maybe a physical map, we'll see.
Yes.
But that's a stretch. I'm not saying I've ever done that before. Journaling is another one. For me, it's probably more about getting things off my mind, like writing them down so I'm not thinking about them. And that's how it helps to disconnect. And yeah, I mean, the new places helps a lot too, I think, like shifting your environment, because one, you're not around the same habits, that same cue that then causes the same reaction. So you can kind of break through that a little bit. And also there's just inspiration. There's things you want to do. Being here in New York, naturally, I think we're going to be out doing more things, right? Because there's so much to do. So I think that helps.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. I think anytime you can isolate your mind and remove the cheap dopamine from your life is so impactful. We haven't touched on this yet. Last month, I went on a Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And man, like the learnings coming out of that, of just like how important the small moments are, and like what I saw myself was just like the attention that I put on distractions in my life. And when you remove those, just the level of like freedom and that lightness that you touched on earlier, of just like life can be so simple, and there's a lot that comes from that simplicity. So I think that's beautiful. The Patagonia trip sounds incredible, man. And I hope you lean into that.
What was the motivation behind the Vipassana for you?
Yeah, I think it was something that I had heard from multiple friends as a driver for them to learn more about themselves. And I've had, a meditation practice, a journaling practice, but this was the first time that I stepped away from work and just like social media in general. And very quickly I realized like how distracted my mind was. You remove those distractions, and ironically, like old memories start coming up pretty frequently. And so I just experienced like this emotion day like 4, 5, and 6 of like childhood memories, and like saw myself probably similar to your like psychedelic journeys of like things that I had discounted or gotten away from that were core to my personal values, and how to get back in touch with the Luke that I want to be, and how I show up for people and relationships. And I think it's very easy to distract yourself into becoming like this person that you want the world to see or your business needs. But at the end of the day, man, like if you're not happy with who's showing up for yourself every day, that's like a challenge. And so this was for me like the forcing function to be like, all right, you need this. And if you don't, like, I don't know what would have happened. So
Wow.
integration's the hardest part, right? Like actually doing that on a day-to-day basis is tough, but
And probably coming back into the real world around friends and family who don't understand the version of you at that point, right?
yeah. And learning that, we react to the sensations in our body, whether they're positive or negative. If you're in pain, you're going to move your body because you're in pain. If you feel, validation from something in a movement that you did, obviously that teaches your mind to want those things. And stepping back from that and just observing those thought patterns and the sensations in your body is something that,
Would you just like sit through aching pain? Like, is that
dude,
your?
I mean, that's the goal, is
Yeah,
like to
yeah, yeah.
learn that the pain is something that our mind is telling our body. But by day 10, I was like, I'm in so much goddamn pain. Like we just gotta push through this last
Yeah.
day. But there are people that were able to just sit consistently for hours on end without
Wow.
moving. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I'd be in your camp for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
you learn the art of just pushing through.
Mm.
But anyway, a little side tangent. Talk to me about the core values that you look for in members that are joining AOM.
Yeah. Oh, good question. We have a bunch of criteria around like their experience in because we're focused in the business world, so that matters. But values wise, it's funny because we have a team that we interview everyone that comes in, and have a process for that. There's also written application before that. And some of the questions we ask the team afterwards are things like, would you spend a week with this person? Would you go and live with them for a week on a residency, for example? And it's funny because there could be some people that look like really great candidates on paper. But then the answer to that question is, probably not. Why not? Oh, like really intense energy and kind of in a different stage of life, for example. So that's really funny how those hypothetical questions play out. But a lot of similar values to probably the way we live, which is they are seeking a life of freedom and new experience. They're not tied to their business. So, a physical gym, for example, where they have to show up in the building every day, probably wouldn't qualify. So they're like tangible things, but also willingness to learn and willingness to give and not just get. It's not a transactional type relationship. It's so funny because, when we first started this thing, I thought it would be so much about, oh, cool, I can join this network, I can learn from people who've done the thing I'm trying to do, and I can, progress myself or business faster. And I thought that was the actual, maybe it's the justification, but actually it's so much more about finding people that you fuck with, people that like the same things, like the same sports, can talk on the same level, and have the business stuff in common. So much of even the trips that we do are more relationship based than they are business a lot of the time. So it's just funny how that shifted. It's more about finding people like you in this world of noise and chaos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that I think is cool about the business that I've read is you guys guarantee a 10x return. And I've seen from the outside people that are part of the community that have shared how much they've gotten from the experience itself and the relationships they've built. Tell me, have any like success stories stood out to you since you started AOA?
Yeah. We have a lot of people that have gone into business together, found co-founders, people that have realized the thing they're working on right now isn't the thing they want to be working on. So purpose, finding purpose and going new directions. We have love stories, not the last, but the residency before. Two of the container that we created led to two people falling madly in love. Actually, Gabby's meant to be out in New York, but she's not here because they're traveling somewhere. So, yeah. So I think there's so many different facets that you go down. Of course, there's also wins in a business sense and the ability to problem solve and find new growth channels and that sort of thing too. But yeah, they're the more human things I think that have come up.
Thanks for bearing with me on the technical difficulties today.
When I first started Brand Booster, I've got this video on my phone, and we didn't have studio lights or anything like that, so we had this lamp that didn't work. The lamp was there, and we taped a torch to the lamp, and the torch is our little. So yeah,
the scrappy days, man. I'm glad that you can feel on it. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. What have been some of the challenges that you've seen founders speak to when they come on these residencies? Like, is there a common thread amongst people when they share that you feel like has been a learning for you and the rest of the community?
One thing that comes to mind is we did this exercise. We just got back from Alaska, and beautiful lake house. To us Australians, it was like the American dream, kind of lake house, jet skis and stuff. But that particular trip, we did an exercise around like, what masks do you have on right now? And what would the version of you without the masks do? And there was kind of this recognizing, calling it out, and then removing the mask. And that led to so many like way more open conversations. That led to people dancing in the middle of the circle with less, fear. And I really liked that exercise because one thing that came through was everyone had them. Everyone was wearing a mask of some sort, different masks and whatever, different fears, but we all have them. And I think that's probably the most common thread. Is like, we may have different problems, but we all have them, and there's similarity in some way, regardless of your business model or where you live or anything like that. So realizing that you can learn from anyone in the room and anyone around you.
Totally.
And teach anyone as well. Yeah.
Is there a mask that you shared with the group that you felt like at the time you were wearing that over time you were able to step into a different side of you?
Yeah, many. One was this I think something that has come up for me a bunch in my journey is this fear of success in a really weird way. And I think I've felt the need to have this persona that everything's as authentically as I try to share on the internet, still have this persona that everything's okay. But there's been several times I've been negative bank account, and in those moments you're never going to, or at least I was like, there's no way I can ever share this exact thing. So now becoming more comfortable with it over time and being able to say, yeah, there was that time that this happened. But the mask in that scenario is like putting, this good face. Oh yes, we get to travel all the time. We have this fast growing business. We're living this dream life. But then, there's times where you've got your social use is out of control, and you feel guilty about that. And you don't call your parents enough. You're losing this connection with the people that you really care about. And I say you, but I should be saying I. Yeah. So that's an easy example, but ultimately there's often many masks that we wear as people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing. To round this out, I think people are probably interested in the dream vision for AOM, be it a specific location or different products that you guys will offer under the brand. Where do you see this going in the next 5 to 10 years? And what are you most excited about?
Thanks for asking. This is turning into an Art of Monday special. I believe we can influence culture and breed a new wave of entrepreneurs. I say entrepreneurs, but that'll include people building really big, world-changing things, but also just people making a live off doing what they like, just creating that freedom in their own lives. I think that's a cultural shift, people moving away from traditional education into more self-led education. But the more we can create a space for these people to land and find their people and thrive, because environment is really everything, that's what I'm excited by. I think there's a day where we have School of Mondays or Monday University, and it's an alternative university that's, changing the way education is perceived. But we're right in this space, and that's a growing market. And I think we can contribute to being. Shopify is a great example. Their kind of mission is to create more entrepreneurs in the world, make it accessible and easy for people to go and start a store and sell, create a business around it. So we're sort of in that space, but doing it while really enjoying the process, and not doing it for the outcome necessarily. So that's what I'm excited by. As Naval said, I hope one day there's 7 billion, 8 billion businesses or people who have a life of freedom as a result. And I hope that it's positive sum and helps people along the way.
What a full circle moment too, from choosing not to go to uni, learning all that on your own, and then ultimately, hopefully building like a school where people can learn.
An extension of that, if you want to paint the picture, there's physical campuses at some point. That's a less scalable model, of course, but I think the in-person stuff is so powerful. This human connection is what we miss. I imagine it though, like French countryside, big converted farmhouses, like the co-working, tiny homes around the edge. You've got the open training center and sunlight and sporting grounds, and so you think of like this campus to hang out and build, but you live there. I think that's a really important part. And then go through and have cohorts of people to come in and just build their idea, whatever it might be for them. It might be apps, it might be being a creator, it might be music, it might be building something else. And 1 month, 2 month cohorts, and it becomes this accelerator, and you can bring in some of the greatest minds, and then you do that everywhere. You do that in every country, and that's when you start really making waves, I think. Yeah.
Holy shit. That's awesome, man. Well, you got customer number one sitting at this table. Final question for you. I've heard you talk a lot about purpose, and I think there's probably people listening that are like, I want that, like if I was shown my purpose, I would be doing exactly what Jai's doing. What would you say to those people that are in search of their purpose and haven't yet found it?
I mean, what most people would say is, ikigai, go and find the thing that you love but can help people and make money, etc. But I think that's impractical sometimes, because that's what you have available to you right now. And for some people, they might kind of know what their purpose is, but they're like, that's never going to be able to sustain me. I can never make money from that. So for me, it's actually more about starting something and knowing, trusting that you're going to go this way and then this way and then this way and eventually find the thing. You know, you're peeling back the layers, right? And that's okay. People are trying to jump straight to the end, but if you enjoy the process, you'll find it anyway. And I can say that in hindsight. I wasn't thinking that in the moment, in the time, but that's the process at least to get there. So start something. It might not be the right thing. You might even know that, but it's going to teach you and upskill you and allow you to meet the person that leads to the next thing, you know, connect the dots later.
Yeah. Action creates data. I think that's something that I try to tell myself every single day. Where can people follow along the Jai journey?
Jai Journeys, coincidentally. Jai.journeys on most platforms. Jai Howitt on YouTube, I think. But yeah, really, really down to have conversations with interesting folks who are out there chasing dreams, and Instagram's probably the best place. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.